Yeah. So how have you been doing? What's been up with your art and everything?
Yeah,
Since then?
I feel like that must have been like around the second EP, so like 2 years ago or so. Or maybe it was the first album. But yeah, I put out another EP in 2022. And then last year in the summer of 23, I started working on my first full-length album with my co-creator, John Velasquez. And yeah, I did that for the past like 8, 9 months. And I got back my master's this summer and I've been like slowly starting to release everything. So basically just working on music. It's 10 songs. It's the first time I ever co-wrote with people. I'd never done that before. And I co-wrote with like 3 different people. And yeah, really exciting. So I'm just kind of in album release mode of like the singles, visuals, like figuring out sets for like playing and like acoustic things. So it's just a lot of newness, but it's really exciting, really cool. I'm really proud of this body of work and I'm really excited about this song that's coming out. It was the last one actually that I wrote for the album. And with a different producer. It was like something that I just was like writing with this guy because we'd been talking about it for a while and I was like, yeah, let's do a session. And then came out of the session like, wait, this is a really good song. I need to put this on the album. Like, how do we get this on the album? This is what it's been missing. So yeah, I'm really stoked. It's a bit more upbeat and a little happier than I usually do, which is nice. It's good to have the variety and like something a little bit cuter. But yeah, so mainly just working on music consistently.
How does it work with, because you mentioned this was the last song and it became like the single, which is kind of like
Mhm.
it's different for every artist, right? Like picking the
Yeah.
singles and like all that type of thing. But it seems like you guys had, that spark, so you knew immediately that that was the song.
Yeah.
Why did you think that? Like, what was the process behind it? Was it like a particular experience in your life or life events, like a life experience that brought you to write the song? And why is the song so
Yeah.
special and what makes it like the single?
Yeah, I think like because we just went in to write, there was like no pressure. I was kind of just like, oh, let's see how we write together, right? Like you never know. Like I'd never worked with this person. You're like, this could be great, this could suck. Who knows? I think not having the pressure was really helpful. And it was just kind of serendipity. I've been watching a lot of like, I love a good like 90s rom-com, like that style music and movies. I've been watching a lot. I had a crush on someone. I don't even remember, but like I'm insane when I have a crush. So like I kind of came in being like, I have this crush energy that I need to put somewhere. I've been watching all these like 90s like rom-com movies. And then in the back of my head, it was more like I had all these like when I was creating the album, I was like, okay, I have these kind of songs, like some pared down, more acoustic folky, like some that are slower, like some that are kind of mixed, some that are more upbeat, like what is like just thinking about like what haven't I written and what do I want to write more of? And so when I talked to Daywave, he was like, do you want it upbeat? What do you want? And I kind of just gave him some direction. And then he's just like insanely talented, honestly. He put together this palette very quickly of like guitars and like melodies. And he'd be like, hey, do you like this? It was very easy. We wrote it in the session that day, like pretty much all the way done. I had one other session with him. Um, but yeah, as soon as it was done, I remember it being really good because I was like, wow, this was really easy, which is not always the case. Sometimes you write a song and you're like, I'm stuck, or it takes a bit to get it to a place where you're like, this was the vision, like not everything is so quick, but this one, it was like just from front to back really easy. And I drove home, like listening to it all the way home, where I was like, oh my God, I just want to hear this over and over and over again. And that's when I was like, oh, this is the song. And so I brought it to my producer I was working on the album with, and I was like, hey, I wrote the song. I really like it. I feel like it's what like it's a palette that the album is missing. Like this is kind of the missing piece. Like, how do we get this on the record? Because we were at that point getting into like mixing and mastering for the rest of the songs. So it was kind of a quick turnaround, but luckily everyone was really like willing to work together on that, which was great. There was like no ego or anything. And I'm really happy. I think it did like round out the album really well. And I think when I showed it, like once I finished the album and I had the masters, I finally showed some of the songs to like friends and I was like, hey, can you tell me like your top three? Like I just kind of want opinions now that it's done. I don't like it in it because then you get very like, you can get swayed from like what you want. But like now that it was done, it's like I can't be swayed. And I was like, hey, what? And like that was one of the songs that like most people were really drawn to. Like almost everyone had that in their top three. And I was like, okay, this validates how I've been feeling, which is nice when you have that reflected back to you. So I think it kind of felt like a no-brainer for being one of the singles.
Nice. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it seems like
Yeah.
you're like all about the song. So
Hmm.
I love that feeling. And it's when you
Yeah.
write songs like that that they just come out and they just become something out of nothing in no
Yeah.
time. It just means that it was there, like it was already there, kind of like meant to happen so quickly.
Yeah.
Um,
When it comes with ease like that, it feels very Like, okay, this was so easy, and you have like a nice attachment to the songs. You're like, this wasn't, sometimes it's nice. The struggle is sometimes good when you get to the end and you're like, this is a good song, but it's always nice when the song just knows who it is from the beginning. You don't
Yeah.
have to work
Yeah,
through
it has a
it.
life of its own, you know, like
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it. But how does it complete the record? Like, so what is the record all about? You know, like,
Yeah.
obviously it's been you've been out doing a lot of different writing and a lot of different, the EPs and but this is an actual album. So it
Yeah.
seems like this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like this is like a milestone for you,
Yes.
right? Like, so you're becoming like a grown artist, like a grown
Yeah.
up artist, quote unquote. When
Yeah.
when somebody puts out the album after all the EPs, it seems like
Yeah.
there's like some kind of like a higher message. Is it wrong?
Yeah.
What is this record all about? Like, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah. So I think like going into it, I didn't have like a clear vision of like, this is what I want the record to be. I went into it more being like, I only want to pick songs that feel really authentic to me. So it was like, do I like this song? And so the more we wrote, the more it was like, okay, this one's good, this one isn't. Like this. And then as it started compiling, we wrote the song called Everything Changes, which is what the album name is. And that's kind of what encapsulates like the entire album. It's this like the array of human emotions that I went through basically in that year of like my connection with myself, whether it's like anxiety or self-perception, or like me talking to friends about relationships and like feeling out of control, or like love and falling in love, or having lust, or like crushes, and this kind of like ever evolving idea that like the thing I want most in life is change and to evolve. And it's also the thing I fear the most because it threatens everything that you know. And that kind of push pull energy of like, I want this and I'm afraid of this. And like, that's kind of the only thing that'll be constant in your life for forever. Like, you never don't have that. And me trying to, in my own way, comes to terms with that. So that's really, to me, what the album is about. And this song just had a small portion of like that joy, right? Like the newness, the excitement of something that's going to be coupled with other songs that are like breakup or post that, or when things don't work out, or like your own internal struggle with yourself, like all these reflective feelings, like internally and externally, that you experience in life. And how that's kind of always going to be the case. Like the stability that you're looking for is like never really stable, except maybe within yourself. So yeah, that's basically what it's about.
Yeah, it's the eternal struggle of artists, like if
Mm-hmm.
it's like you can never find the right balance or like equilibrium with your emotions and all that. That's why you keep writing stuff, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise you just wouldn't have anything to write about. Who has influenced you in the past few years, like as you evolved as an artist and all that? What, if anyone, not just musically, like anything like artistically, or like people in your life, really, like doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
What and who influenced you in the past few years, like to kind of like made you realize that you wanted to do this album, that you wanted to get to the point where you are right now? Like, like what's been happening in your life that kind of
Yeah.
like brought you up to who you are now? You know what I mean?
I think especially during that time, like the past 3 or 4 years, like with all the changes in the world and me, like the age that I'm at, and how I was feeling, I got into therapy. So there was a lot of like self-reflection happening back to like my origins, and creating really healthy dynamics within my friendships and like safety, and kind of rewriting my own story. And I think that like external influence of my dynamics and me really like assessing where I've been and where I want to go pushed me within music, because it's very connected, to be like, I really want to work with someone who's going to force me to be more vulnerable and like reflect back to me things so I can become a better writer. And so that's when like I started looking for a producer. I was like, I want someone I can co-write with. I want someone who's super emotionally in touch with themselves so that I can get more vulnerable within my music, so I can grow, so I can write about things that maybe I wouldn't have, or someone who can be like, hey, what are you saying when you're saying that? Or like, let's go deeper. Like they push you to really delve into things. And that's something I was really craving because it was something I was doing in my life more. And I wanted to do that in my art because I knew that's how I would grow. And so that's like when I met John, I knew that like he would be the one to help me do that. And it was going to be kind of difficult because it was uncomfortable and new. And like when you're new at something, like even writing with someone, I was like, how do you do that? Like, I've never done that. Am I going to be good at this? Like, there's a nervousness to that. Am I going to say something stupid, And then they're gonna be like, you suck. We don't want to work with you. Like, there's always that fear. But it was like one of those things, like the fear that's igniting, where you're like, this is how I grow. And this is how I'm going to make something that I'm proud of and like get to the next step. So I think just a lot of my personal relationships and like my growth journey is what influenced a lot. Obviously, like there's a lot of artists that I've listened to that are always inspiring, but I don't think I ever listened to someone and be like, I want to make something like that. It's more like, oh, this song makes me feel something, like, let me take that feeling and write something with it because I want to help other people feel things and feel safe to like express themselves. Um, yeah.
Nice. Because I was gonna actually, you answered another question that I haven't asked yet, and I was gonna ask you like what the feeling was supposed to be for me, like for the audience,
Yeah.
but you already answered that, which is great. Um, what was I gonna say? The visuals and like all the aesthetics part and everything. You mentioned that you're working on that stuff as well.
Yeah.
Anything in particular that from specifically like a visual standpoint, from just like an aesthetical standpoint, you want to achieve with this, or like in other words, what's the aesthetical
Like
and
world.
visual equivalent of the music for this record?
Yeah. I think for me, because I'm someone not in a highbrow way, but I love cinema. Like I love indie movies. Like I can consume that all the time. Like I love storytelling. I love falling in love with characters that I don't know. Like that is something that just me as Jazzy loves. So I'm trying to infuse that into my visuals because I think it's just another connection point for people that maybe listen to my music and also like the things I like to feel connected on. So I love more cinema style music videos as opposed to music videos. Like I like a storytelling element to it and something that feels a bit retro. So I think for my last music video, Lux, we did a lot of references to different movies that I love that I thought had a similar theme to what I was trying to convey with this song. And we kind of tied that in very like minimally, but to kind of add to the story and put in little Easter eggs of things that I find inspiring. And that's something that I really want to do going forward for like all of the visuals for this album is to incorporate pieces of myself like outside of the music that maybe other people can relate to. So even for this song, which is very like upbeat and happy, like I'm looking into things with animators because I think it'd be fun to have this song have like an animation style music video that's like really exaggerated because for me, like crushes, it's such a like feeling. You're like, I just like you get the hard eyes. Like there's this like I love like the movie like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, like where they have the things like wow and like it's cartoon style. So like that's something I think would be really fun to like reference movies I love, but also like honor the song in and of itself because they're all so unique and try to find like a connective theme throughout the entire visual world. So that's kind of my focus right now for each single, and then obviously for the album release as well. Um, yeah, I guess
Yeah,
that would
that makes a
be,
lot of sense. And like the
yeah.
the retro part with the animation, which is very modern,
Hmm.
contemporary, kind of gives it like a juxtaposition that I feel like it fits your style. You do have,
Yeah.
I feel like you're as a character, you do have some kind of some of that, like so it does make a lot of sense. Um, I wanted to touch on a little bit more on, we already spoke about this, obviously, like your family, your history with music, and like, as a
Yeah.
since since your your beginning really. But what was it like, growing up with, with a dad like yours, like with you grew up in the music, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You feel like you were already, you just couldn't do anything else in your life, like this was really like what you were brought in. So what was it like growing up with in that kind of environments? Like what are some of the memories that like you still carry on, and like stuff that you've learned from that type of mentors in your life?
Yeah. I think it's like anything, like when you grow up in that, until you get older, you don't know anything differently. So you just think it's like normal or what everyone kind of experiences. My mom was also like, she grew up playing violin and viola. So like she had a quartet that she would play with just for fun. But like every like Sunday they'd come over and I'd fall asleep to music like that. Like obviously my dad's a musician, so he would be playing guitar throughout the house. He came in fourth grade and taught like my class ukulele lessons, like when I lived in Hawaii. So it just kind of was a part of our lives. And even going on tour, which we would sometimes in the summers and stuff when I was really little, like I just fall asleep in the green room. And that just felt normal. Like it's like my dad, it's his songs. Like also living in Hawaii too, you feel isolated where you're like, oh yeah, people know about him in Hawaii. Like, you're not thinking like, oh, other people. And since there's such an age gap too, like I wasn't like, oh, people, like not everyone is like, oh, I know who he is. It's like specific people. Um, so I think it just felt really normal, but I also think it was such a privilege because like growing up with parents that are creative, that support creativity, not only like within me and my siblings, but like within their communities. Like they've been very active in that because they think it's very important. Like that's such a privilege to have that, because I know a lot of people that love music or want to pursue it have a lot of pushback from their family because it's not a stable career and it's hard. And so to have the support of them being like, you can do this, we believe in you, is very lucky. And to kind of grow up with it in second nature, where it's like this ability even just to express myself. Because when I was writing songs for a really long time, it was just for me. Like it was a way for me, like how some people journal, like that was my journaling. It was like, these are hard emotions. I don't know how to say them to people, so I have somewhere to put it. And I feel like that is so lucky that I had that, and a lot of people don't. So in and of itself, like music is something that I would do regardless if it was a career, because it's like ingrained in me and it's something that I need to not like hold all my emotions in. But I have like a lot of fond memories. Like a lot of it was very interactive. Like the first guitar chords I ever learned was from my dad, which he makes up like random guitar chords that aren't even like real ones really, but they sound fine. And it was probably guitar chords to one of his songs. Like he doesn't play other people's music. Like he's very, of his own. So it'd be like I learned one of his songs and that's how I learned like a G chord or like an A minor. And then like I would like go off and write my own songs with those three chords that I had learned. And that's really lucky, and it's a really beautiful way to bond with someone. And same with my mom. She put me and my brother in like piano and violin lessons when we were little. Like music was just in the house, and we were around a lot of like people that did it for fun, people that did it for careers, like all of the above, but there was like this shared joy. And I think I carry that with me, like even today, where there's just an appreciation for it and like its ability to connect us and heal us and make us all feel like seen. And I think like that's what I want most out of my music.
Mhm. Do you remember the first song that you ever wrote?
I do, I don't remember what it was about. It's like a really dramatic title. I was 14 and my dad has a lot of guitars. So he gave me one that was my mom's that she didn't use. So he was like, here, take this. Here's the chords from my song. And I wrote this song called Falling from Grace, which is really intense. I don't really remember what it was about, but it was the first song I wrote that had chords to it. Like when I was little, I would, write songs for forever, but it's like I couldn't spell it was free thought. We had no life experience. It was just expression. And that was like the first one that really like I remember playing it for my grandma and being like, look, like singing my song. And that kind of started it all. Where then like all throughout high school, it was a lot of like writing when I had boyfriends or when I was actually experiencing real time things, less about like thought and more actual feelings. It was like the place I was able to put things, and it became kind of vital to my existence.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Like the very first song I wrote was for Jesus, because I grew up Catholic, and in Italy, like obviously church is
Yeah.
your second home. And that was my first song at 13, 14 or something. No, maybe yeah, 13. It's a song for Jesus. I don't remember how it goes or anything, but
Yeah.
it's like a moment for every musician, like the first time that they actually
Yeah. When you like put
play
something
along.
together, like those two things. And it's so weird. You don't even really know how you do it. It just kind of happens. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah,
cool. Like people are
yeah,
like, how do you do that? It's like, I don't really know.
yeah.
Just kind
Well,
you
it's
just do it.
natural. It's
Yeah.
like a nature, like you said.
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel like, let's close with this, because with being an artist these days, like it's you mentioned it before, it's a very not a it's not a stable career. It's never been really.
Yeah.
But especially these days, like how does it feel to be like an independent artist that has to do everything herself, that has to curate her own relationship with the music industry, and her mentors and her producers, and like write her own songs and then create the content for the TikToks of the
Yeah.
or whatever. How does it feel to be like that every day? Like
Yeah.
do you get burnouts? Do you ever feel like, just to be
Totally.
real, you know what I mean? Like how
Yeah.
does it feel like you always have to do something that you don't want to do? Or like what's it like, like the
I
day-to-day?
feel like
It's always cool to have the
yeah,
album and like feel great about it, but like people don't
it's a
realize
wave.
how.
It is like a wave. Like it's like I will, because again, like it's inconsistent. There's times like when I was writing the album, it was great because you have like 2 to 3 sessions a week every week. So you have structure and then you can like build around that. But like inherently, unless you're like very high up, there's not a structure to your life and you have to create it. And there's a privilege to that. Like there's parts of it where I'm like, I get to have creative control of what I want. I don't have people telling me what to do. That's really cool. That's nice to be able to like create your own world, but also it's like so much pressure on yourself. And there is you fighting like, well, I really like this song and I put it out and I'm not getting the response I wanted, or like, oh, this isn't doing what like other people, like comparing yourself to people online, or like they're all making these kind of songs, maybe that's what I should do, and then having to like fight that and be like, well, that's not really me though. So I think I ride a lot of waves of like sometimes feeling really inspired and really like, go, 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 let's do it, let's put out content, like I have this going, or like something like this, a really cool interview, this is really great, like I'm feeling momentum, or I'm just feeling like connected to this. And then moments where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Like, is this going to go anywhere that like substantial or where I want it to go? And like that fear and that self-doubt are like, am I even good enough? Like there's so many talented people, so many talented people that want what you want, which is great, but it's like not everyone gets where they want to go. And there's always that like, well, I'm not good as this person, or I'm not as this person. That's just very real. And I always try to come back to the fact that it's like the only way you can really do anything is if you are authentically you. Like that's the only thing I have to offer that isn't what anyone else has. And usually I can get back there, but yeah, it's the emotional roller coaster for sure, like consistently. I don't even know, maybe successful musicians have that as well. Like when they're at the top, maybe it never goes away, but I think there's that constant struggle of like, how do I stay in my lane and focus on my vision and what I want, and not just get swept up by like the self-doubt or the trends or the this or that, or this is what you have to do. Like everyone has an opinion on how you have to do things, but there's never actually a roadmap. Like if there was, we would all just do it and be successful. Like it's not real, but you get all these people with opinions like in your head, and it's really hard to like stay in your lane. But I feel like that's really the only way that like I could be successful and also be happy. And those are both important things, and actually contribute something that's going to like benefit me and other people, which is very important to
Mm.
me.
Yeah.
So
It's
it,
meant
you
to, yeah, it's good that you mentioned be successful and be happy, because it's very rare that a musician or like an artist puts those two things like on the same plane, because
yeah,
success, it seems to be that success is what people are going after, and they're willing to shape up their creativity and their artistry just to meet the trends, to meet
yeah.
the industry, whatever like the industry tells them. So is there anything that the industry ever, like, what are your relationship with the industry like? Is there anything that you kind of like how did they been treating you? Like, is there anything that they kind of like wanted out of you, or like
Yeah.
from your experience, like what was
I think,
the
I mean, in
upside and the
general, like,
downsides of
yeah, I don't like, because I'm very independent, like I don't have a manager. Like right now I have like a very small team that's mostly here to be supportive, but they're not people that are like managing me and telling me what to do. I'm not with a record label. They have a lot to say about things from what I've heard. Like I don't have, which also there's a lot of support within that. So it's like I don't have them telling me what to do. I also don't have the support. So it's like, so I feel like as of now, I've been pretty lucky within the quote unquote industry. Like every producer that I've worked with, the community that like the producer I work with has fostered. It's all very talented people that are not ego driven, that are supportive, that are like, it's actually been pretty good. But I think the industry as a whole of like, put out content, like do this, do that, don't do this, do that, like that influx of just information is very overwhelming. And it does make you feel like you're like, I have to constantly hustle. But then it is like, to be an artist and create, you also have to like live and experience things, to write something. And then to make music, it takes time. And I think like a lot of us, which this isn't like a shame on anyone, but it's like you don't realize that because we're so used to things just happening. But it's like just put out, put out, put out. And it's like that's not really how it works. At least, I mean, maybe if you have enough support and you're just like that, everyone's different. But yeah, I think that constant influx can be really overwhelming where you're like, I could always be doing more. I could always be like better at this. I could always be doing this to be this. And it's like hard to get yourself back into the place of like, okay, but let's not compare ourselves. Like that doesn't benefit anybody, including ourselves. Um, which is kind of always the struggle.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. And it's good to be independent, really, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, and this will be my last question, I guess, and what drives you, like what is the purpose for you? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it might seem like a corny like thing to think about, obviously like you want to make music, but don't you sometimes like feel like there's a higher
Yeah. No,
purpose for
totally.
like for you to like be doing this? Like which, like what is it for you that make you still want to like, do things musically,
Yeah. I think for me, it's really connected to like this younger version of myself that did start writing to make myself feel seen, like I was a witness to myself and my emotions and feel connected to something because I was very lonely and I didn't know how to express myself. So for me, like writing, which I always usually write from a pretty like vulnerable place, is A, to connect to myself, because it's when I feel the most connected to myself emotionally, and then to connect with other people. Like I want to make music that's authentic, that makes other people feel seen and less lonely, and for us to be able to see each other and to create community and to connect, because I think that's like the thing I want most in the world. And that's like, this is the best way I know how to do that. So I think that's the main thing that drives me and makes me feel the happiest, is like when I see people being like, oh my God, this song, like this got me through this, or like this made me feel seen. This is exactly how I've been feeling and I couldn't express it. Like that makes me so happy, because I've been that person so much, that like the fact that I can give that back to them, like not only do they feel seen, but I feel seen. And it's such a beautiful, like symbiotic relationship. So yeah, I think that's the thing.
Great. I love that. Yeah, that's great. So what's gonna happen with you this year? What are the plans for the, you're working on the
Yeah.
visuals and everything. Like, what's the plan for the next for the rest of the year? Are you already writing new stuff? You doing tours? Like, what's
Yeah.
happening with Jazzie?
So
Can you
the
tell us
plans are
about it?
like unfolding because I'm independent. So we're kind of like, how are we doing this? So right now we're working on, because of this first released, kind of like the release schedule, which is pretty going to be back to back up until the album being released, which will probably be this summer. There's not an exact date yet, but visuals for that, the release schedule, working on stuff for shows, hopefully tour at some point. That's, depends on how everything goes, obviously. Um, but yeah, mainly that. So we're doing, hopefully like every 6 weeks, we'll be doing a single up until the release of it. And that's just a lot of stuff around that. And then I'm also going to start writing again. I talked to my producer and he was like, it'd be nice to like structure your day where it's not all just focused on release, because that can get very like daunting. So like start writing and see what's coming out. Like I would love to write with other people too, because I think every time you write with someone new, especially when, they're a good person and it's good, like it brings something out of you that the other person didn't. And I learned something new about writing. So in general, I'm going to start writing again just for fun and see if anything inspiring comes out, and then the release schedule stuff. And then, yeah, shows as I can. And then whatever blossoms from that would be really great and beautiful. And I'm excited. But yeah, that's the main focus for the next like 6 months to a year.